K-pop is right in the heart of Hallyu, the Korean wave. There is an American who delivers K-pop news to the international K-pop fans faster than Korean journalists. It's K-pop columnist Jeff Benjamin. He shows his love for K-pop through the articles and reviews he writes for the popular American music magazine Billboard. He shows expertise through his views and receives an immense amount of interest from local and foreign K-pop fans. Jeff Benjamin is playing a pivotal role in the globalization of K-pop and Hallyu, the Korean wave. Let's see the present and the future of K-pop with Jeff Benjamin on today's Heart to Heart. Hello and welcome to Heart. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We just gave a brief introduction of what you do, how you write about music from all around the globe, and how you're Billboard's K-pop chart columnist. Now, could you tell us about yourself in more detail, and in more detail about the work that you do?
I mean, it all started, when I was just a boy in Chicago. My mom was very, very into music herself. She was a singer, went to school for music too. And I just always remember hearing all different kinds of music growing up. Everything from the Beatles to dance music to Italian operas. My mom had a belly dancing phase at one point. Loving music, regardless of what it sounded like or what language it was in. As long as it spoke to me, it was important. And I took that to heart, and I always knew I wanted to be a part of music, wanted to discuss music, explore music in that way. And when I went to school, eventually at New York University, I studied music and journalism, and slowly but surely just got really into this idea that I wanted to expose more and more artists from around the world, artists that I wasn't seeing getting the coverage that a lot of pop artists in America were getting. I slowly but surely kind of got into K-pop and wanted to share more of it, and it, as the genre kind of got bigger around the world, more opportunities kind of came about in America. No one was really writing about it, so I got to be the guy, hopefully, that wrote about K-pop, and since have done stories while working as Billboard's K-pop columnist, writing for places like New York Times, Rolling Stone, ABC News, and beyond.
Yes. So I guess we have the guy in the studio, the guy that I guess discovered K-pop way before others did even know about K-pop. So tell us about how it all started. How did you find out about K-pop?
Yeah, it wasn't like I was importing CDs, when I was a teenager from Korea. In middle school, it was definitely with the advent of YouTube and when that started getting more popular that it was just so much more easy to share music and reach music around the world. When you're a K-pop fan, you don't just, listen to a song and that's it. You hear the song, you watch the music video, you see the live performance, you get to know them on variety shows. There's a lot of content that's available to you right away. And YouTube is so great in the sense that K-pop artists have always put their content in Korean, but also in English. Every song has a Korean and English title. So it was very, very easy to be able to dive deeper into K-pop. And slowly but surely, it just became this thing that I was so excited by, not just because of the music, but because of the whole content, the whole package. So
what do you think brings K-pop and I guess even K-pop idols into the spotlight?
What brings K-pop idols to the spotlight is something really great about how K-pop tries to be this full package of entertainment. I feel like lots of times you might have a good song, or there might be a good music video, or the artist might have a high profile, but lots of times, in my opinion, popular music and pop artists in general don't have the full package. The whole concept is not fully realized. But with K-pop, every single detail is figured out. Every album has a concept and a look and a color scheme and a sound and a vibe. And I think that's what makes people so drawn, I think, to K-pop, is that it's sort of this 2.0 version of pop music. That's what drew me to it. I still remember being like loving artists like the Spice Girls, who had a very strong concept and a very, every Spice had its own look and feel and color. And every time I was just so blown away by everything that they were doing. So I think K-pop kind of brings that style, but also makes sure that the technology is there too.
How big is K-pop in the American music market?
Yeah, it's definitely growing. I've always said, K-pop it's still going to have this very strong fan base. It almost has kind of like an underground following in that way. It's very similar to Latin music or punk music, which has very strong, very passionate fan bases. So what's really interesting is that I was reading the other day about this, about a report from Google, where they kind of analyze not only the search terms for K-pop in the US, but BTS and other big groups around. So on one hand, you could say BTS is very, very popular in the US, and K-pop is sort of following along, but I would say right now people definitely, they understand K-pop, they know the word. It's very different from when I started in my career. Things are changing in a good way.
But of course, we have to talk about the negative side as well, or at least I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
I mean, there's got to be some negative views on K-pop. In the US, for example, what might be some of these negative views on K-pop in the US?
Yeah, I think when it comes to negative views, I feel like international music kind of has a tougher time just in general. It's really unfortunate that we have so many popular K-pop artists, so many popular Latin artists, so many popular artists around the world, but they just don't have the same opportunities and the same visibility just simply because they don't sing in English. It's things like that that I think are the most unfortunate, the most negative views. It was about Girls' Generation, and the title of it was called Factory Girls. And it was very much about this idea that this K-pop world is very much a factory, very much manufactured. On one hand, I think there's this image issue about it being too manufactured, or it's not going to find a way to connect with Western audiences. But I think just if there are opportunities, more visibility in that way, that it can kind of overshadow those negativities.
That's true. Okay, well, talking about BTS, we just talked about Girls' Generation. Before that, we did briefly talk about BTS. I mean, BTS appeared at this year's Grammys. They were obviously very, very popular. They're the first Korean group to make it to #1 on the Billboard 200 albums chart.
Yes.
So I'd like to ask you, we know they're popular. How popular are they?
Yeah. The Grammys is a really good indicator of where they kind of are, because the Grammys, it is run by the Recording Academy. The Recording Academy is it's well known as being very traditional, very old school. You have to be in the music industry for, I think, 9 years or 6 years before you can even become a member of the Recording Academy.
I see.
So the fact that the Recording Academy is taking notice of an artist like BTS, that is almost like one of the final frontiers, I think, like the final walls to be able to break down, and when they present at a show, this is a show that's seen by, so many people in America. The Grammys, again, you actually can't buy tickets to it. You have to be invited to it or be a member of the Academy. So it wasn't these moments that we've seen in past award shows where there were a lot of yelling fans, people crying, whatever it might be. It was only the people in the audience who had been invited by the Academy, and they still did a great job. They didn't necessarily, I'm sure the fans, they love the supports and they love having the fans there, screaming for them and whatnot, but it wasn't necessary this time. BTS did a great job simply on their own, and their merits kind of showed that they could present an award, be on the Grammy stage along with everyone else.
And besides BTS, I'm sure there are other groups, as you've mentioned, that may come one day and have to leave the next day. But in your opinion, who are some of the other K-pop idol groups that are worth paying attention to, or keeping your eyes on?
Yes, everyone is special in their own ways, of course, and everyone has their own path. But Blackpink has done a really, really great job, I think, so far. But I really do think that not only are they getting the business side in order, but their message and what they stand for, I think, is very, very accessible to a lot of Western audiences. They have sort of a multinational makeup members, and they really do kind of, I almost think of them as like a new age Black Eyed Peas. The Black Eyed Peas represented sort of like 4 different people in that way, and a lot of people connected not only with their music, but just the fact that they just looked different and they represented something a bit different than what we were so used to seeing from our pop groups.
Jeff Benjamin has loved K-pop for a long time. Out of all the K-pop fans around the world, it goes without a doubt to say that he has definitely made a distinct mark as a K-pop fan. He did many interviews with a countless number of K-pop artists and is an unrivaled expert in the K-pop music genre. What is his interpretation of the past, present, and the future of K-pop and Hallyu, the Korean wave? Let us hear more about his interesting story. I'd like to ask you about, some more like Wonder Girls, for example. I mean, they were initially the first ones to kind of, make it there.
Yeah.
They became big. Didn't last for a very long time, I don't think. But of course, they were initially the very first. I guess they were the ones to kind of start this K-pop craze or popularity, this trend.
Wonder Girls, I think they were, again, so important to the history of K-pop for sure. They really did kind of find those initial moments of success. They had, opportunities with the Jonas Brothers, and they had, TV appearances, and they were willing to spend the time to study in America and be ready to kind of embrace the culture a bit more. And I always really respected that about their initial approach. But it felt like they weren't kind of pushing out enough. Like the next single didn't do as well. And I thought that was really unfortunate that it seemed like all the plans kind of halted after they didn't have as big of a hit single. You need to kind of keep going, you need to keep pushing out content, you need to be able to really keep going. And I think so many artists and so many agencies get scared kind of when they don't see like the huge success. But, at the same time, I don't think that we were seeing the full scope of K-pop. They were singing their Korean songs, but in English. And so it's a bit of, it was same with Boa's first album. Boa's first album came out in America in English, and it was still very Boa. It still was her style, but it didn't feel like the honest representation of who she was.
I mean, throughout your career, I'm sure you've met so many huge stars. BTS is one of them. You've met many more. So of the many artists, musicians, and idol stars, K-pop stars you have interviewed and met, who has left the strongest impression on you? I know this is a difficult question, but is there someone that just pops in your mind right now?
I'm not saying it just because we talked about BTS, but BTS really did... it just felt very comfortable, it felt very natural, and I felt like, particularly RM, the leader, it was the first time that BTS was ever using kind of this more, they were using gender-neutral pronouns, and I really thought that was really special and something I had never really seen in a K-pop act in like their interviews and things like that. So he was saying things like, whether it's our boyfriend or our girlfriend or whatever it might be, and it was just kind of a small decision that he made in his speech, but it made all the difference just in how many more people might connect with him as a result of just using that word. And so that was really, really kind of special in that way. And I always kind of go back to that moment. Similarly, CL from 21, I was so lucky that she was in New York for Fashion Week one year, and it was before any of her solo work, and we got to spend this time talking about her solo ambitions and where she saw herself, not only representing as an artist, but as a woman and as a woman from Asia. And for the first time, I really felt like I was getting a sense of what she felt her purpose was as a human, not just about as an artist and what maybe her or her group represent, but what she felt like her bigger place was in sort of the world. And she said she wants to show that Asian women can, we are not this, we're not the stereotypical, whatever kind of horrible stereotypes people have. They're like, I want to show that we're badass, that we can get out there, and all these things. And I was like, I really see that that she wants to show more of herself and what she can represent as a human. I thought that was so special.
stories. We'd love to sit and talk about many more artists.
Yes.
You know, you hear your stories. But I'd like to, talk a bit more about you now.
Okay.
Okay. So you have told us that you've always been into music. I mean, your mother. You were surrounded with music. So I'd like to ask, I mean, when it comes to music genres, I mean, it's countless.
Yes.
Why of all those different music genres, why K-pop? I mean, what made you fall in love with K-pop?
K-pop was just really strong pop music first and foremost, but then it added the visuals to it, added the concepts, it added the fact that, the different members were going solo and were able to show different aspects of their artistry in that way. There was so much more content to get into when it came to K-pop than our pop music in the US, which was just, oh, here's a song or here's an album or whatever. And most of the time you didn't even like the whole album anyway. And I think it's because this industry is so tough. The K-pop industry is so competitive, and it really does thrive on this competition that, you want to be number one on the music programs, or you want to be, the artist who has a long-lasting single in that way, or has longevity in that way.
So, of course, you are a K-pop columnist.
Yes.
So how did you get started?
Yeah. I was so lucky at the time to be interning at Billboard during college. And, at the time we had a really strong intern class. I really, people who were eventually went on to write for places like Rolling Stone and other big outlets. And I really wanted something to, make me stand out. So I was like, oh, I think K-pop is popular. I like it, but I think there could also be a way to connect with Billboard's audience with K-pop. So slowly but surely, I would kind of start pitching different stories and different ideas, things that I think would do well with Billboard's audience. And, it wasn't easy. I had an editor at one point tell me, stop trying to make K-pop happen. It's not going to happen. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I was like, I'm going to show you that I think this is worth it. But I just kind of kept pushing at it and kind of just tried to get more opportunities and create more opportunities for myself. I was so lucky that when I graduated in 2012 from college, Psy's Gangnam Style blew up. It was a huge moment for my career. I'm actually going to meet Psy when I'm here in Korea.
Oh, wow.
And I can tell him finally, you made my career, thank you. But I think it was a really good timing just in the sense that people, for the first time, were really waking up to this idea that great, fun, accessible music could be in Korean. And from there, I just kind of kept pitching different K-pop stories. We had a really great timing with Billboard Korea launching in 2012. They launched a K-pop chart as well. And then in 2013, when the Billboard magazine brand kind of relaunched itself, my editor told me, we're relaunching the website. We're going to have a pop column. We're going to have a Latin column, hip hop column. We think it's time for a K-pop column. Would you be interested in heading it up? And I said, of course, And
Right. So it happened. The Billboard's K-pop chart was launched.
Yes.
And this was when you were working as an intern.
Yeah.
Right. I was actually doing a Google search, and I was typing up Billboard's K-pop chart, and I came across a few articles about how the K-pop chart was discontinued.
Yes.
Some said the English version was discontinued. Some said it was the Korean version that was discontinued. I think it was 2014 or something. So what's the story behind this?
Yes, I'm glad you
totally
asked
confused.
so we can clear the record. Yeah. So, when Billboard Korea launched in 2012 initially, they also launched a local K-pop chart and it was a great chart at that time, but then unfortunately the Billboard Korea brand took some time off and they actually relaunched a couple of years later, and they're back and they do have a new K-pop chart. But it was always a difference between the Billboard K-pop Hot 100 chart was very different than the actual K-pop sales that we were continuing and counting in America.
Okay.
So when the K-pop chart actually became discontinued, the local K-pop chart that is, became discontinued on Billboard.com, I kind of took it upon myself to say, okay, well, I want to show that K-pop is growing around the world, especially in America. We are having growing K-pop sales, especially since Psy and Gangnam Style blew up. There was a lot to show and a lot of exciting chart activity, previous to that, in 2011, 2012, there wasn't really K-pop on the US charts. But you could arguably say that thanks to the K-pop Hot 100 chart and Billboard Korea's work, that that did help lead to more visibility on the Billboard, US Billboard K-pop charts in that way. I was very shocked because at first I thought people weren't going to really care about the US sales, the US charts, but fans and agencies really took notice and really started reporting on my reporting on the charts. So then slowly but surely I was able to kind of be able to show that yes, K-pop is growing. There's nothing I get excited about more than be able to say, yes, they broke a new record, or a new artist had their best US sales week yet, or whatever it might be. So I get really excited about being able to say now that, K-pop is alive and well on the US Billboard charts. And before it wasn't necessarily the case, but now we can say it, and it's very healthy, it's very exciting. And that's kind of where I think the confusion came from, is that before we were reporting on the K-pop chart because there wasn't that same amount of activity on the US Billboard charts. Nowadays, it's so fervent and so exciting that there's like sometimes too much to report.
I'd like to ask you my final question. I'm curious, what do you hope to write about, on K-pop in the future, and what's next for you?
I've been so lucky to meet so many artists, I really am, I never take that for granted in any sense of the word, but I want to talk to the CEOs, I'm looking at you, Mr. SM, Mr. YG, Mr. JYP, well, I've been so lucky to do an interview with Big Hit's CEO. But, I want to know a bit more about the structure and the world and the business, that kind of, because an artist can be as strong as they can be, but it really does come behind the team and the people working for them. And I want to know more about that mindset, the way that they think and the way that they kind of perceive, the world and the industry and their artists and what their artists stand for. Because I think it would be so interesting to hear that business side of things rather than kind of the artist side of things. I think that would be really, really cool. But so far, the CEOs haven't returned my calls, so so hopefully it'll happen. But I think that's really what I want to do. That's what I want to. I want to know more about that side for sure, while hopefully creating more meaningful content in that way. But also too, I've been studying this for so long. I've been a true fan. I think my oh my gosh, it's been almost a decade of work here, now in this work. I want to show that, knowledge is power, and information is key. And there is a lot more K-pop media these days and a lot more outlets and writers working about K-pop, but I think it does take a special mindset and a special perspective to be able to find ways that will connect in a meaningful way. And I really want to show that, I can help spread this in ways that I don't think they ever thought possible. Personally, I want to see K-pop become way more ubiquitous. I want to see a K-pop movie. I want to see K-pop books. I want to see it all over the place. And I think there is that opportunity for it. It's just there hasn't been the chance yet.
I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I had a wonderful time, learned so much about K-pop. Obviously, I don't know that much, but it's so nice and pleasant to hear from you, especially that K-pop has potential, that it has the power to grow even more. And I want to thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for promoting our music, K-pop, to the world.
I'm just doing what I love to do. I'm so lucky that I get to show things that I love, on major platforms around the world. It's all love, It's heart to heart. It's my heart, coming out there. So it's very nice of you to say, but it really is just my heart's coming out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Yes.